Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good evening. Hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving and perhaps some time off. This year was definitely an unusual year, so I know many people had smaller gatherings or just stayed at home and had a virtual meal with others. So with that, I am back with these Tuesday live streams, and we're actually going to discuss the second topic of this Leading Change series for my High Five strategies, and that is around how we can influence others. So 2 weeks ago in the last episode, I talked about identifying stakeholders, which is a key aspect for successful change, knowing that about 70% of change efforts fail. And so how can we increase our odds around that? So one other component that I'm going to talk about tonight is influencing others. And one of the things I remember is that there's this one time, I'll just share a brief story here. I was working within an organization, and we used to do some succession planning for the organization. And for those that aren't familiar with succession planning, what that is, it's a process by which organizations and leaders identify the rising stars in the organization and potential people that can fill their seat. When someone gets promoted, or when someone retires, or someone rotates to another position, or someone quits, whatever the reason, or someone goes out on disability, whatever the reason may be, to have a plan in place, just like a baseball team would have a plan in place, right? You have the farm leagues. Bring someone up to the major leagues when you've got an open need and opportunity. So traditionally, we would identify for each position, each leadership position, we would identify 5 to 10 potential successors, different levels of readiness. And this one client I was working with in the organization had 600 employees in that department. And not that you're limited to just those people, but the organization had thousands of employees overall. And many of their leaders, they had I'd say about 8 leaders or 8 directors. And most of them pretty much had similar roles. They just had different technical areas, but the job itself was pretty similar, about 80 to 90% overlap in terms of what they had. And so one of the things that I ended up doing was creating this approach to group together those leadership roles. I had a lot of commonality, and have a pool of candidates that would funnel into any of those roles. And part of the reason for that is, one, for just logistics. It would have been a logistical nightmare to try to create, all these different successors. So we were doing things at the manager level too. So that was at the director level, and then you get to the manager level, and that's where it really became an issue. So we ended up creating the real values. We ended up creating these 6 categories of managers, if you will, hundreds of managers in this case. Like we had like 140 managers or something. Basically created the categories and created these pools of candidates, and it was ended up being a pretty good solution because it provided flexibility to identify prospective candidates, and also took out some of the extra work involved to help the business continue its business effectively with all the changes. And so the 5 tips I'll refer to, we'll get at some of this. One is you want to identify with any change. And so you might have a technology change. You might be, maybe it's any kinds of change, that organization-wide change that you might be trying to influence. But there's there's kind of 5 questions you can ask, really, and that is the what, right? So what's this change about? And that's to create a compelling vision. Create a compelling vision of what the future state could be like. Something that's going to be attractive, that people will be drawn to. So in this case, the vision that I created along with the chief information officer, the CIO at the time, or the VP of this organization, it was basically the flexibility it would provide, and the opportunities as well would provide for employees in the organization. And it was a little more sophisticated than that, but just to boil it down to that, and that they wouldn't have to attend as many meetings. I think that's what sold them. The second would be who is to consider the who, like who is your audience here? And so in some cases with a change, you may need to manage up, you may need to manage across, right, into other business units, and to think about with your communication. So it's really important with any change effort to really be strategic with your communication and target that to different audiences with some call to action. So what is it that you want them to do with this information you're sharing about the change, right? Is it you just want them to understand? You just want to create awareness? Is that the intent? Is it that you want them to adopt a change of some sort? Is it that you want them to inform others or champion the idea and spread the word to others? Is it that you want them to be a sponsor for the change? So that's one of the keys is how are you going to communicate? So compelling vision, and how are you going to communicate this, and to whom? The third strategy is to really identify the motivators, right? And that's by asking why. Like, why should someone even care? Why should they care? What's the pain point? And so in the case of the succession planning example I had, the pain point is they had people who weren't ready to fulfill these leadership roles that were really needed. And it was affecting the engagement in the organization, it was affecting them meeting certain milestones and whatnot, because if you have ineffective managers, it creates a cascading effect on a lot of outcomes with the organization, and not just within that department, but within the whole business side of the house. That's everyone that's relying on them, for example, to have systems that are meeting their needs and that are working well. So you want to know what the kind of the WIFM you've heard, right? What's in it for me? Identify, what's their pain point, like, and what's being addressed by that compelling vision, right? What's the pain point being addressed, and what's in it for them? What's the advantage for them to embrace it, depending on what your message is, whether it's to adopt or to champion your idea. At the end of the day, how will they benefit? How will it make their life easier? How will it make them more money? How will it save them money? Whatever it may be. How might it improve relationships? How might it speed things up? Excuse me. The fourth strategy is more about how you go about it, and that is, some people are convinced with data, right? There's different ways to influence people. Some people are more like, just show me the data, right? So yeah, I might, it might be a compelling vision and all that. It might be clear on your message, but again, for someone to be convinced or assured to act on it, sometimes we need that. So some people are convinced by data. Other people are convinced more by the relationship. They're more influenced by the relationship. It's a matter of trust. That's what this fourth strategy is about. It's about trust. Why should I trust you? Well, because, okay, well, the research says, or because I have a relationship with you and I trust you. You've never steered me wrong. I know you have my best interests at heart, or that you're competent or whatever it may be. Or maybe there's a third party out there. Maybe it's, you've heard of third-party survey like J.D. Powers and Associates, right? Like some people are more influenced by that for credibility. The fifth strategy is about demonstrating the extent you care. Like people won't necessarily embrace your change unless they know you care about what they care about. So it's kind of like Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. So it's really the feeling that people have if they were to go ahead and join you on this change journey. That's going to be an important factor there for them, for whatever the issue is at hand that you're trying to change. So those are really the five, they're not the only five, but those are 5 key aspects that I've learned in my 20 years of managing change in organizations, is having that compelling vision, having that strategic communication or message to tailored to different audiences, identifying that pain point and explaining the benefits, right, for each of those audiences and how this solution, how this vision this change will address that, right, and tap into something that's worth it for them. Having a mixture or determining, what kind of information is needed. Is it data? Is it relationship oriented? And the last one is, demonstrating kind of that human factor, that you care about what they care about. So those are 5 strategies. And next week, I will be talking about strategic planning, which is another aspect, another catalyst for change. So join in next week at 5 o'clock Pacific time. And I will also be on again this Friday at noon to take any questions people have around workplace challenges, workplace issues, career and job search issues. So bring those with you on Friday and look forward to seeing you there. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.